The judge thought he had full control, until Trump stood up and exposed the bias in front of millions. What happened next left the entire courtroom stunned. The courtroom in Phoenix, Arizona was packed. The tension was suffocating. Every seat was taken. Reporters lined the back wall, and camera crews hovered like vultures waiting for a headline-worthy moment. The air smelled of polished wood and fresh ink from legal pads hastily scribbled on by court clerks. Donald Trump sat at the defense table, posture straight, eyes locked on the judge. He wasn't here to put on a show. He was here to fight to his right. His lead attorney, Mitchell Reeves, flipped through documents, occasionally whispering to another member of the legal team. The case against Trump had been built on shaky grounds, a mix of political maneuvering and legal gray areas, but the media had already painted him guilty. At the judge's bench said, Judge Alan Whitmore, a man whose reputation preceded him. His past rulings were peppered with personal jobs at conservative figures, and his disdain for Trump was no secret, legal analysts had warned. This trial was doomed from the start, but Trump wasn't the type to back down. The murmur in the courtroom deed as the judge banged his gavel. We will have order, Whitmore said, his voice slow and deliberate. He adjusted his glasses, then scanned the room as if he were an emperor, overseeing a kingdom of subordinates. Mr. Trump, let's make one thing clear. This courtroom is not your rally stage. You will not grandstand. You will not turn this into a spectacle. Trump didn't flinch. He leaned slightly forward, resting his hands on the Polish table. With all due respect, Your Honor, I don't need to make it a spectacle. You've already done that. A ripple of whisper spread through the courtroom. The judge's expression darkened, but he ignored Trump's comment. Instead, he turned to the prosecutor, a slick, overly confident man named Brian Holloway. Mr. Holloway, proceed with your statement. Holloway stood adjusting his tie with the kind of smugness that came from knowing the judge was on his side. He paced in front of the jury box, his voice smooth, rehearsed. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a case of repeated deception. A man who believes he is above the law. A man who has manipulated the system for far too long. Trump sighed, shaking his head slightly. The media had spent years branding him as a villain, twisting narratives, feeding hysteria. Today was no different. Holloway continued, his voice rising with every accusation. The evidence will show a pattern of misconduct, a blatant disregard for accountability, a refusal to accept responsibility. Trump exchanged a look with Reeves, who scribbled something on a legal padlet. Him talk, he's overplaying it. But the real problem wasn't the prosecution, it was the Judge Whitmore barely concealed his bias, nodding, along with Holloway's statements, his expression a mix of approval and amusement. Every word from the prosecution seemed to be met with an encouraging glance, while the defense received nothing but sharp interruptions. When it was Reeves' turn to respond, the contrast was glaring. Your Honor, we'd like to formally object to the characterization. Whitmore raised a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. Mr. Reeves, I strongly advise you to tread carefully. I won't have baseless objections slowing down this trial. Reeves opened his mouth, then closed it. His frustration was visible, but he forced himself to remain composed. Trump, however, smirked, shaking his head. You don't even try to hide it, do you? Trump muttered, just loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Judge Whitmore's jaw twitched. He banged the gavel again. One more outburst, Mr. Trump, and you'll be held in contempt. Trump spread his hands, just calling it how I see it, Your Honor. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Journalists typed furiously. The judge's bias was becoming undeniable, and people were noticing, but things were only getting started. The prosecution continued hammering their narrative, painting Trump as reckless, dishonest, and undeserving of the public's trust. Every word out of Holloway's mouth was rehearsed, polished for maximum damage. It was less of a legal argument and more of a political smear. Trump sat back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But inside he could feel the slow burn of frustration. This wasn't a fair trial, it was a stage performance. Then the judge made his first real move. Let's be clear about something, Whitmore said, interrupting Reeves mid-response. This court will not entertain distractions. We will stick to the facts. It sounded neutral on the surface, but the way he said it, the sharpness in his tone, the glance he shot at Trump made it obvious. Reeves cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we're simply trying to establish. I've made myself clear." "Mr. Reeves." Whitmore interrupted again. "Proceed with caution." The tension in the room thickened. The defense was being muzzled in real time. Trump turned his head slightly, making brief eye contact with Reeves. They both knew what was happening. This wasn't about facts, it was about controlling the narrative. Holloway, of course, seized the opportunity, Your Honor.